Welcome to the Startup Grind.
The second Startup Grind. First one went very, very well. I'm hoping this one's going to go very, very well too. Thank you very, very much for coming down and making the effort. We're kind of doing lots of meet-up collisions to keep things a little bit interesting, get people to meet people they might not already meet. The principle of Startup Grind is to share and collaborate, and hopefully that ties in with a lot of the stuff that we're doing here. And our guest this month is Geoff Roberts from Democrata.
Hello.
Are you on? Excellent.
Am I on?
Ah.
I'll try that again. Hello.
Excellent. And the American way of doing this, we were told when we were onboarded, was that we had to bring in Geoff from the side, do loads of, "Ooh, all right, yeah, come on." We're in the UK, so we thought a nice introduction would be good. So I'm going to kick off, and last month's was quite structured, very historical and everything, but we're going to sort of just float around and come up with some stuff. So the first thing was a bit of background to yourself, Geoff, and tell us how you ended up here today.
Okay. That's quite a long story. I started, my background actually is as a musician many, many years ago. And I started a niche music download company in 1999. We had some other founders. We had backing by what was then FreeServe, was one of the, I don't know what it is now actually, but anyway, and private equity. And we licensed music from around the globe, and we gave it to a platform to make it available to the public. And the bubble burst. No one could raise finance. So I ended up moving to the platform that they made it available to the public. And I ended up running all of the user experience, design, editorial, CRM, content management, etc., for this organisation. It's a white label platform. Customers were Microsoft, Coca-Cola, etc., etc. A lot of very high-profile clients. In the early days of legal music downloads, in fact, we were the first legal music download company. That was when Napster was just exploding. Pre-iTunes, and it was a fantastic experience. So that startup was founded by Charles Grimsdale and somebody might have heard of Peter Gabriel. So that was great. I learned an enormous amount there. Eventually that company was bought by Nokia, and I ended up at Nokia. And through this whole process, I started out being not technical. I'm not going to code now. But you end up having to understand how software is written, how it works, what the best ways of doing it are, good architecture and bad architecture, and you can use creativity to solve problems. And I really enjoyed that process. You also become a real nerd or geek, I'm not sure whether either is the right word, about data and the value of data and the creative possibilities around data. Especially when it comes to things like predictive analytics, which is what I'm doing now. My journey started at niche music and ended up working for Nokia, global corporate, having been a startup. I can tell you a bit more about that a bit later. And being exposed to some of the most amazing markets, the most amazing opportunities, and the most amazing people that you could possibly ever want to work with. And now we have a company, Democrata. I say we because there are 5 of us. And we are looking to move into sectors that use legacy operating models, transforming them by bringing in proper data science and helping them make data-driven decisions, which are always more effective and more efficient than non-data-driven decisions. Hunches are not always bad, but typically they don't get the same result as good data-driven decision making.
And one of the things we were talking about earlier, which I think as soon as you start talking about algorithms and big data, there's a sector possibly within the creative world, you think, that's not for me. But actually, we had quite a good conversation earlier about how big data isn't all about ones and noughts and bits of stuff being stored in databases. It's bigger than that, isn't it?
Well, if you think about it from a technical perspective, big data is not the size of the data, it's the tools you use to manage it. That's really what big data is about. There are new tools to manage very large-scale data sets and get an output, and that's the most important thing. It's the output people are interested in. It's not the way you're doing it in the black box. That's all interesting to you. It's very interesting to me. But what they want to know is what problem is it solving? Is it making me money? Is it saving me money?
Yeah. And it's a creative process.
It's definitely a creative process in that, and this is something I found that certainly at on-demand distribution, the initial music startup and at Nokia, is you become very good at looking at whole disparate data sets and going, gosh, you could do this and that would have real value. We could save time, we could reduce headcount, we could make more money and access more markets if we could only put this data together and generate an output like that. Knowing you can do that is also very powerful, but it is a creative process.
Mm. And actually thinking about what the outputs could be in the first place when you're going into certain markets, they're not thinking about. So it's almost creating a market in some ways.
Yes, it is.
Which takes more than just being able to process what's
It does. It's a creative process. It's also a collaborative process because I'm not going to sit down and code, so you have to somehow explain it to people such that they understand it and can actually see the value in themselves and see the value in themselves too.
So Democrata's doing reasonably well, and actually Democrata were our monthly featured startup, and possibly a bit more about Democrata structure, some of the pros and cons, and thinking as you went along creating that monster.
Well, let's wind back a bit when I was thinking about this. I left Nokia a few years ago, and I knew I wanted to do to make a difference in markets where the difference hadn't been made, and I knew I wanted it to be around analytics, and I also knew that one of the things about spending 15 years doing what I did, both for a startup and a big corporate, totally different animals, was I understood myself. So the first starting point for me is what am I good at, what aren't I good at? And what I did is, I'm lucky enough, I don't know whether you've ever done Belden models on yourself or Myers-Briggs or any of the other tests that actually try and help you understand what type of person you are within a team.
These are like psychometric tests.
Psychometric tests, beg your pardon, yeah. And I wasn't surprised by the results when I did these tests. But what it means is you know what you're not good at. And what I did is I set out to really put a team around me, or a team of like-minded people who could cater for those gaps. So if I just briefly go through the team, I'm a creative, visionary, evangelising product guy. We have someone who's superb at business. And I mean the conversations to be had around business, with business people, let's use it, the lingo that big industries would understand. We have someone who's fantastic at networking, someone who's actually a mathematician, and another guy who's actually fantastic at end-to-end process.
Right. Which is always important.
Which is always important because if you're like me, you don't really like end-to-end process, and it means that things get dropped. So you just have to admit that and say, okay, so how are we going to put this together? And that's what I did, and I went out and found those people, and we're now...
And did you know them before? You worked with them?
I knew one of them before, and he introduced me to the other three.
Right.
Yes.
And this is all down to, I think we talked about rights of, shareholder agreements being very, very important.
Well, to ask the question that you asked me earlier, isn't that dangerous when you've got 5 people? Because everyone wants to be the one person that does it all, and you get all the money and you get all the kudos and all the glory. But I won't use the language, the vernacular of this particular statement. But 100% of nothing is nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And 20% of, or 50% or 40% of something is real. So, I'm not going to sit down and code, but I need people to sit down and code. I need people to go and do various other roles as well. So, the way you mitigate against things going wrong is you have a bulletproof, as far as it can be, shareholder agreement. And that means you have to sit down with them and identify in advance what you think is going to go wrong, and try and guess what the ones you can't guess are going to be, so that you can try and put workarounds in there for that as well. So understanding yourself, understanding the team, and making sure you've got a very, very good shareholder agreement is really important.
And one of the things, going back to some of the people in our target audience, being creative people, you possibly, if you're heading up the idea, you're not necessarily predispositioned to be thinking about that level of detail. It's not something you want to do. You want to be conceptual, and you don't really want to be sitting there writing clauses in the shareholder agreement. So there's a role to do if you're a creative and you want to team up with people.
Yes.
You've got to kind of step over the line and say, a
But
detailed day.
yeah, that's true. But I think you have to be honest and say, actually, I am going to be part of a team running a business. And if that's the case, I do have a level of responsibility around making sure that the business is set up on the right footing. And it doesn't mean that you can't go back when you think you've got it wrong and change it. You can. You just have to all agree that the changes are relevant. And in fact, that's the one thing that you constantly hear me say, I think, is every week something changes and everything changes and you have to go back and redo things. So not with the shareholder agreement, but in general with the kind of the journey that you take when you're doing a startup. So.
And Democrata now, is that a different beast to when you originally conceptualised it?
Yes, but I always knew that the vision I had in my head is never the picture that comes out at the end.
Right.
And it's very hard to make that happen, especially when you're dealing with lots and lots of different people. Oftentimes it's better than I could possibly have imagined.
Right.
And sometimes it's just different, but that's okay. That's all right.
Mm-hmm.
It's different now. It's not different in the sense that the high-level aim is there, but some of the sectors and the markets that we're going into are a real surprise.
Right.
But they fit the vision, which is to take predictive analytics into sectors that haven't used it.
And this is all about how do you make those decisions where to move into? How do you do that? Is VC funding involved, or are you grant funded, or?
No, at the moment we've got grant funding, and I'm looking at whether we go angel or VC. Okay. So we're a combination at the moment of bootstrapping and grant funding. The grant funding is very, very gratefully received. So we're getting stuff done, and it's just trying to identify. One of the things I think VCs will say, is you have to imagine is your market a mouse or an elephant,
right?
Or is it a very, very big elephant? And your pitch and who you go and see will depend on what that is.
Yeah. So do you want to touch, because you've been having some fun at some investment workshops, is that right?
Yeah.
So one of the things, I know there's definitely good 3 people in this room who are in the process of raising money and finance for their businesses and have been doing some pivoting of themselves, Ken. So possibly a little bit about how much fun you've had doing that. That would be good.
Thanks. What have I learned? It's business, so they're interested in the return. If it's an angel, they might come and help somehow. They might enjoy that process, but they want a return. They're not really interested in your product. They're interested in knowing that you're passionate about it, that you've done your market research, that there is a market, that you've got your numbers and understand them. It doesn't mean to say that they're right, because they're all wrong when you first start. That's true. Things will change. But you understand how you're going to take any money you do get and execute your operational plan with that money. So they're going to want to see what are the milestones that you've got in place. Why is it you need all that money up front? Could you do it in stages? And I think they want to know that you are going to stick with it. That's the other thing. I mean, those are the kind of bullet points that I've learned. I think as well, there are really good presentations and really bad presentations. Making sure you absolutely understand the numbers. It doesn't matter whether you're the accountant or not. You have to understand the numbers so well that if they ask you what a difference of 5% would make to your projections, you can tell them. So you really have to do sensitivity modelling around when your market changes, what happens. If the price goes up or goes down, the amount of people take your product or don't take it, what's going to happen to that? Because that's going to have an impact on whether they invest or not. So I think, being passionate is important. They have to know that you're going to be committed to it. But also understanding the information that they want to see. And there are 6 or 7 things, you can Google them, but they want to know that the team's right, the product's right, the market's right. What they really want to know, they talked interestingly about, if you think about a curve, most people, because you're passionate about it, you have everything about the product. Okay, then you get to the funding bit at the end and it tails off. And it needs to be the other way around, because they don't really care about the product. Okay, they're interested in you telling them what's the market opportunity, what's your solution to the problem in that market. Now tell us how you're going to get there. And that involves how you spend more money. So that's what they're really interested in. And it's quite a cold place to be when you're very passionate, spend a lot of time being very passionate about something. But the sooner your objective, the better.
And in terms of VC funding, true that is possibly colder than angel funding. And angel funding, you'd hope that they would become part of the team in some way, even if it's just a dipping in. Or
yes, and typically you would probably find the angel's going to advise you, and they might have a strong marketing background, and you might have gone to see that angel specifically because they have a strong marketing background, and you might say to them, this is the plan, and actually it would be really great if you come and help us with the marketing. Or something else that you've got a skills gap on.
And we talked about this earlier as well, which is they want to know that you've got the staying power for a good 2 years probably to bust your nuts relentlessly.
Yeah.
So tell us about this, because am I allowed to share your 4 children? Is that, yeah. So this must be,
my life.
Yeah. Tell us about your work ethic, Geoff. This is, are you up at 4 a.m? And apart from the fact you're woken up by your daughter?
So there's my alarm clock. I am. So that starts with the ability to prioritise. Okay, this is where it starts. And also the ability to say no. Because there are so many things we could do every day. I could have said no to come in here. I didn't, because I wanted to come and share what I knew. And I've known Louise for a while, and we've had a great relationship. And I wanted to come and share some of the things. But you have to know, you have to work it out. How much time have you got to do things? Always make sure you've got time to think. Because one of the things you will suffer from if you don't plan properly is not giving yourself time to consider things. And I think the lack of consideration is sometimes what makes people make very, very bad decisions. So you have to give yourself the time to think. It's not doing anything. It might look like it from the outside, but you definitely have to have that time. The rest of the time, from my perspective, is all about money. That's what it's about. If I'm trying to earn it, or I'm trying to get people to invest. And that really is my job at the moment, is to go and talk to people and understand more and get better at the process of trying to raise money or earning money. Now, we're in an interesting space. We have a reference customer. We just did a project up at the Hartree supercomputer that we won. We won the resources to do that, which is fantastic. And we also have a grant from the European Space Agency for some of the other work that we're doing as well. But it's all about money, because you can't do anything unless you have money. And that's what my day is full of. So work ethic, I will answer calls at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. I think of things at 1 in the morning and I'm awake, I'll get up and I'll sit down and I'll write them out and I'll look at a plan.
And are you on the trail at the minute? Are you trawling around, or are you doing it through personal connections in terms of who you're talking?
There's the old saying, keep your powder dry.
Yeah.
Is when I think we've identified everything. And a good example is I looked at the pricing of something today which just recently changed, and that has an impact on the way that the financial modelling is going to be done. So that means I need to go back and redo that, because I don't want to go in and get that wrong. It would have been in the wrong direction. You have to keep working to iterate and iterate and iterate around your business plan, about your financial modelling, cash flow, and operational forecasting. So it never stops.
And it's so I know that some business, sort of 5 core people within the business. How many peripheries have you got sort of floating around there?
The Hartree project had 9 data scientists involved. The business development, marketing, PR.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, you don't involve any of them in any financial worries. No. They have to get on with their thing. Yes. But what about in terms of the shareholders? Is that something you have to share every day, or it's purely down to you and you have to just report it?
No, in the company there are 2 directors and 5 shareholders, and we have what we call a founders meeting every month. Because it's effectively an advisory board to the directors. There's 2 of us. So, and the reason you need that is because you can never think of everything. And the range of experience of the other guys means that they're always going to have a perspective that I hadn't considered. So this is an important thing as well. Be prepared to learn every day. Never think you know it all. We all know we don't know it all. but you can in a rather glory mood walk in thinking and you'll have yourself cut off at the knees. So involve other people and learn. And in Agile, there's fail fast and fail often.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing every day. I try and fail a few times and learn something.
So in terms of a successful startup, your day is really functioning around problem solving or opportunity grabbing.
Yes. Identifying where we can solve problems and making sure I am targeting people within those sectors to get deeper within their networks, if you like, and to understand more about some of the problems that they face. It's not that I don't know we could help, I do, but you've got to convince them. And to convince them, typically, you have to show people. People aren't very good when you explain things. If you show them something, that's great. So what you can come away with, for example, from conversation is, okay, well, we could actually do a proof of concept there, skunk works, and get something that we could take back to them and show them, and then they'd understand it much better. So things like that are really important. Having the facility to be able to do that are important as well. Much better to show people than to talk about it, because in certain areas, in certain sectors, they will not understand the first word you were talking about.
No.
We did a great exercise the other day, I have to tell you about this, where we were sitting in a room trying to, the guy was trying to get us to understand how a group of people that don't give you feedback, VCs, okay, while they're listening to you, are perceiving what you're saying and how to understand it. And what they did was they gave you a walkie-talkie and everyone a bunch of shapes cut out, okay, and a piece of paper with a border. And you had to go out and explain, you had to have a piece of paper with shapes on it and explain how they needed to place the shapes within the border to make the pattern that was in front of you. You got no feedback because it was a one-way walkie-talkie. And when you went in, the people that were really good at it, everyone got it. 90% of the people, the shapes were just complete rubbish. They didn't make any sense at all. So it was an exercise in understanding that you might know something, you might think you're explaining it properly, but you have to understand how other people perceive what you say.
And is this a case of pitch, practice?
Fail fast, fail often.
Yeah. And in terms of the product, we talked about sort of wipe your face and throw it out the door.
Yeah.
And I'll talk a bit about that.
Well, we did that as an old joke at the music study. The product team would just say, "Yeah, you just got to get it out there. Wipe his face, shove it out the door." And then people will tell you, is it good, is it bad, it needs to do this, it needs to do that, paint it yellow, you don't like it blue, why doesn't it do that? And by the way, where's the back button? All that kind of stuff. All the things you think you know but have forgotten. It's very rare that people put something out that's perfect. You've got to get that first iteration of your products out there, because that will then, the consumer or the market will then determine how your product roadmap changes.
It's constant pivoting.
To a degree, yes, I think so. Yeah, and in some cases, yes, literally, you think you're going to go that way, and in fact, you end up going that way. But you follow the money, as we talked about it.
Yeah, which I'm sure it's possibly some of the people in the room, the whole very thought of just following the money kind of goes against some sort of creative inner sort of blessing of creativity. But actually, without the money behind it, everything fails.
You might have created something that's, like I said, the picture in my mind is not always the way it turns out. They would say that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. But the reality is you might think your market's in one place and you might bump into someone that says that would be fabulous. And there are loads of us that would use that. If you could just change it to do that. So the core's the same, but actually your market's completely different.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. That really does happen a lot. As part of the project I was running up at Hartree, I thought the biggest benefit in terms of bringing stakeholders in was going to be with a group of academics and people in the industries that we were looking at. Turned out to be the guy that just got the overarching vision, which was prediction. We're good at prediction using data, mathematics. And he's the guy that got that. He's the guy that we're going to be signing an NDA that's soon to go and talk further with their internal teams about how we can help them be more efficient. So I thought I was going to get all the biggest bang for my buck was going to come out of all the the academics and the other certain sectors. It turned out to be the guy that was the least obvious in a way.
So, out of your, how long's that grant been expiring?
About 8 months.
8 months.
It's only 8 months.
I thought it was long.
No.
And maybe not necessarily with Democrata, but obviously with things before. What would you say is, from a startup perspective or growth perspective, what is your most daunting thought or a task that you've got to achieve, apart from raising money? Well, no, that could be your most daunting. Money, that's it. Yeah. And how do you know how much to ask for? Because it's always true.
It's going to be wrong. They accept that. You have to understand that a VC or an angel has come across many things like this before. The assumption that they make is everything's going to be a bit wrong. But again, as long as you can show common sense behind your thinking and that you've got a plan, then they're not going to shout at you.
And what sort of returns are they expecting? Because I know some people might hear.
Yeah. So a lot of people want to know that on exit they're going to get 5 to 7 times
within
5 years,
5
3
years.
to 5 years.
Yeah.
Some of the things we're looking at the moment, I think, are a bit longer term actually. But then it's a big elephant.
Is that it is? Is that mainly through then upscaling the financing? So they pull out at a certain time and leave it to a bigger investor, or they want to sell it? Or
There are stages. So you get an angel investor. I mean, the process normally is bootstrap or founders put some money in. You get an angel investor, then you go to VCs and there are first, second, and third rounds of funding.
Yeah.
And all the way through that process, where you have external investors, is you're diluting.
Yes. Yeah.
So you might end up with 100%, 50%. You're going to end up with you might end up with 15%.
Yeah. It's 15% of something a lot.
So it's 40% of something, not 100%.
Yeah. And so we also talked about something which is one of my favourite activities, which is sweat equity, which is investing lots of time and energy into a business which doesn't go anywhere. I have to be honest. You had a conversation with somebody about sweat equity, which I was slightly surprised, which I learned earlier. So possibly share that.
Yes, I think. If we talk about the pitch you're making, you're going to go in there and they're going to want to see you're passionate. You've been involved, you've done hard work, you've done all those things, and that has absolutely no mileage, because they're going to turn around and say, sweat equity what? This is real money. From the point at which they put the money in, though, your sweat has real value to them. And at that point, you can start putting a value on it in monetary terms. But remember, these are business people. It's a very dry process for them. They want a return. And so sweat equity, they understand it, but when they come down to making that negotiation, they're going to say, yeah, but this is real money.
So in reality, the outcome of that is that if you have a creative idea and you're better off prototyping the idea, wiping the face, getting it out, pitching it, than spending 12 months trying to grow it, extend it, build your first customer, you might actually be better off just going straight to pitch and saying, hey, we've got a great idea, these are the numbers.
It might be the case, yeah. I mean, I know, I told you I was on a panel with Mike Lynch from Autonomy. Does everyone know who Autonomy is?
Somewhere.
Yeah, if you don't, they sold to HP for 11 billion, and then the fund started. But in any case, he's clearly a smart guy and knows how to grow businesses. And the important thing he said is that you have a reference client. Go and get one customer, no matter how much for. Get one customer. Another guy I spoke to in California, who's a friend, who's an entrepreneur. He said there were 2 or 3 businesses he started, and I went round and I begged. I didn't have any shame. I just said, I haven't got any money, but I want to go and do this, and I can do it for you, and it's going to save you this much money. So you'll do that 100 times, but someone is going to say yes, and I've got a big budget that's not being used. Okay, I'll give you the money. So you can get that reference customer and build it slowly. That gives you more credibility when you go and see an investor, or you might be able to take it from there and grow it like that organically. And if that's the case, well then you quid's in, you build it successfully.
So what was the general thought towards sort of investment situation in the UK, and have you thought about nipping to the States, because they generally tend to throw more money at things?
Yeah, I've spoken to people in the States, and I have friends who are very connected to that community. I think the sector that one of the sectors that I'm looking at going into would mean I prefer to come to the UK to start with. I'm actually half American.
Okay.
So I've got the option of going over there as well.
You can tell by the accent.
Yeah, half American means the lineage and the passport.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I was brought up there.
And does that give you some benefits?
Passport.
But I mean,
no,
in terms of
it means I have a passport and I have to pay US tax as well.
Really?
Yeah, let's get into that later.
Yeah, I'll have some silence.
Yeah,
that's not a great benefit.
harsh, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, probably hide the passport occasionally.
You can't get away.
Through certain airports.
Data mining, they'll find you.
Data mining. So, economy in the UK, a good time to be looking for things to do?
It's a great time. I mean, I live in Bristol, and Bristol's exploding with tech. There is lots of support. I spoke to Louisa before this kicked off. It'll happen here in a big, it's a flywheel. It takes time, but success will breed success, which will breed more investment. And you're certainly in the right place here in Reading. So I'd say the market's quite good. A good idea is a good idea. And I think if it's a really good idea and you do what I said earlier, which is to really hone your pitch and make sure that there's no fat in it at all, and that you've got everything they want to see in there, and you've thought through everything, and you know all the numbers, and you know what you want to do, then they might invest for 2 in every 100 at the moment. In lean times, they might invest in 1 in 500.
Yeah.
But you're likely to be the one if you've done all that groundwork.
Just occurred to me, because we've got some designers in the house tonight, in terms of when you do your pitch, what's the general principle in terms of, does pretty pictures baffle, look, if you, is it just down to the numbers? You couldn't care, back of an envelope's fine.
No, it's definitely, you're telling a story, and the story has 6 or 7 points in it that you want to make. You need to make sure that you don't waste words, you say what you need to say, and don't waffle. So actually, good design is very important. I saw a pitch the other day on a video of a good pitch where they had the actual deck, the guy next to it doing a pitch, and he was very relaxed when he was talking and telling a story, and the deck just followed it beautifully and highlighted all the key points without giving anyone too much information. And I always say pictures are better than words, or big numbers are better than a spreadsheet type thing. They just want to know the key information, because what will happen is you're trying to start a conversation with an investor, because they won't talk to you when you're doing the pitch. You're trying to get them to go, that's really interesting, so tell me about this. Once you've got them into a conversation, then they'll go into the detail if they want to.
To leave a little bit suspense. Possibilities.
No, what you're trying to do is get them to ask. You want to tell a story that's really compelling, because then they'll get into the detail. So don't go into the weeds. Stay up at the high level. Don't go into the weeds. Tell them all the information they need to know.
And so, if somebody's got a startup and they're out pitching and they are putting it together on the back end of a serviette, possibly worth investing a few pennies in some creative design, copywriting, at least a decent PowerPoint presentation to just upshift the professionalism of the product.
Yeah, if anyone's got any questions about that, actually, there are 2 books that are really good by one person. Has anyone seen An Inconvenient Truth? The video by Al Gore. The presentation for that was done by Nancy Duarte Associates.
Right.
And she's written 2 books, one called Slidology and another one about the way you tell stories. Brilliant books.
Brilliant. That'll be on my list.
Books.
Nancy Duarte.
Yes. So I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to big her up on this.
I think that's fine. Yeah.
But she's absolutely expert at using visualizations and visuals to tell a story. But just what's needed, not more.
So, future for Democrata. We must be running out of time soon. Yes, we are. Future for Democrata. 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. It doesn't matter. Just see what happens. Is there an exit strategy, or is that not something on the cards at the minute? You just don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about
Okay.
But yes, there is. There is a plan. I think. Well, I know there is a plan. I think though, you don't know the way it's going to go. You don't know whether you're going to build a business that ends up where you end up exiting, or actually you might build something so great you want to stick with it.
Yeah.
The investors at some point, sure, they're going to want to take their money out, and there's a mechanism for them to do that. It's very easy. But for me, I don't know whether I want to be there in 10 years' time, whether I want to try and get it in 7. I don't know. I enjoy, making things work.
It's one of the things people say you have to have an exit plan, but actually, I think you have to have multiple options because actually you have no idea where you could be in 3 years' time.
Every day, every week is different, and that's always the truth. So you just got to adapt.
And that's the fun of it.
That's the fun.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Geoff Roberts from Democrata. Thank you very much indeed. So we've got time for questions and answers and Q&A, I think they call it in the lingo. Anybody got any interesting thoughts?
Hi, I've got
Go for it.
a question. When you say markets using legacy systems,
Legacy operating models. So really what I'm trying to say is people that haven't seen the benefit of data.
Can you give any examples of like particular businesses or
Google is one. Okay. But that's a very big thing. So the project at Hartree, okay, that's very public at the moment. I put a proposal together, but just to tell a little story, if you don't mind. There was an Open Innovation Day, which is about open data and innovation at Harwell, and at that event, lots of people from academia and government departments came and talked about their open data, and there was a prize to use the Hartree supercomputer. If you could put a project proposal together that used at least one of those data sets to do something that hadn't been done before. And I said, right, we'll predict where archaeology is. Because if you're an engineering company, it costs a big, I don't know, what are they called, Balfour BT or whatever, these big things, putting HS2 in. If you hit archaeology, it can seriously damage your project. Cost overruns, etc., etc. So it'll delay the project as well. So I thought, well, we'll try and predict it, and that's what we've done. Now, the proof of concept's finished now. We've got the output visualised, and it's the first time we think at scale that prediction has been used to try and do exactly that, and we've visualised the output on a really good geovisionary platform called GeoVisionary. So that's what I mean. You know, bringing a number of different areas together involved in the process of project management, impact assessment, archaeology, engineers, and saying, how do we de-risk that process for all of you guys? Where do we get the data from? Okay, we've got a bunch of data sources, and now we're going to sit down and work out if we can do that and then visualise it for you. So that's a good example of where it hasn't been used before. That's a sector that's new.
That's a creative thought.
It's a creative process. Putting that together was just, what data have I got, what can we do with it?
It actually generates a geo-visual map of where you think stuff might be.
It's a heat map, that says this is really risky, that isn't at all. And it's we've got MVP, minimum viable product, already.
Yeah. So redirect the line slightly to the east.
You might want to think about going there.
Yeah. Anybody else? Good question.
Yeah. So in terms of that, your 8-month journey, sort of bootstrap, funding, etc. At what point did all 5 of you have other jobs? At what point did you say, no, this is what we're doing? How did you, or did you just rely on reserve funds?
So it's our own funds. And for me, it's the journey of getting from when I left work to getting there, so I had to support myself through that and the iterations of the idea. And for us, the important thing was to start work on proving something. So the Hartree one is one example, but the European Space Agency funding is for another project. But it means that we can get people working on developing the idea. So, as I said, if you've got something to show people, it is so much easier than going with an idea that you try and explain. Because if they can push buttons and slide things and go, ooh, look, that got bigger and smaller, well, that tells me a lot about this. They understand. They understand where the money is, where the saving is for them.
So all 5 of you are 100% in business?
No. There are 2 people that are in it full time.
Yeah.
and the other three support. They're also one of them's probably doing 50% of his time, but it's all about his networks. He's got very strong networks, so it's all about trying to find the right people to bring them to the party, if you like. And it is critical because one of the things we're trying to do that you need access at the highest level to certain sectors. So.
And do you think investors they'll be more open if people are 100% committed, or they go, if you've got other income, then you're not spending all of our investment on yourself and development. It's just a sort of toss. On one hand, you say, yeah, I'm 100% committed, but I haven't got the income, so therefore some of the investment I'm going to use for...
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone expects you not to pay yourself. That's what you're going to the investment for, really, is to build the team. And people are reasonable, they're not unreasonable. I mean, if you want to pay yourself 200 grand a year for the first year, they might have an issue with that.
Yeah, stop it, Ken. Put the money back in.
Yeah, exactly.
Take those shoes right back.
Which bars are you drinking in? Yeah. So I think so. The commitment's important. People being involved full time is important. They want to see the value of the other equity holders. They're going to want to know that. And you're going to have a conversation about that if they all catch it. So for some people it could be an issue.
I think going back to something you said earlier, Geoff, which is if the contract or the shareholder agreement the next day, you literally, actually, this doesn't work, phone up, change it.
Yeah, you have to. You've got to all agree it, but you have to change it. Again, looking at, for me, finding the people that I found to cover off the skills that they were better at was not just because I thought they were better at them generally. I just thought they were very, very relevant to the business because at some stage those people are going to play a key role. And so they will be coming on board at some point in time. It's just not yet.
To what extent do you think winning new business and gaining, attracting investment is based on the uniqueness of your offering rather than the competitiveness of your pricing? Which do you think is the sort of key thing to focus on?
Price isn't always what counts. I'm saying that as a general comment because it isn't always what counts, is it? If you've got
there's a trade-off, isn't there? Obviously, there
is, and I think also the team is important. And from an investment perspective, it's definitely the team. And our backgrounds, we've got quite a background in the areas that we're talking about. So, in terms of pricing as well, there are always comparable business areas that kind of do what you do, but
yes, because there's always the danger of the race to the bottom, isn't there, with pricing,
like cloud,
particularly when we all work in a very competitive world,
Yes, which is and what we're doing is fairly specialised in concept. It's a rarer skill anyway, and to be able to do it, at least I hope it is, and being able to do that, to be able to build a business around that is a holistic thing. It's the team, it's the way you price things, it's the benefits you can take to the market. The ability to look at someone's data, for example, and just say, "Gosh, we could save you money here and make you money here," and know that that's true.
It's a really good question, actually. I'm going to push that to a slightly additional level. So, coming from a marketing and creative background myself, last 10 years, we've seen the market plummet, people per hour, Odesk, people wanting us to do work cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and larger agencies collapsing, especially 2009. There's blood on the sands in the sort of print and creative industry, and a whole lot of freelancers running around, probably going back to their mums and working out of their attic because it was quite a shift. You can buy Adobe software for 30 quid a month or whatever it is, whereas it used to be 3,000 quid for the whole works and Quark or whatever it was. And so eventually, at some point over the next 5-10 years, the whole magic of what you do, which is creating insight and prediction from data, do you think that could become commoditised? Google will just come up with a free data prediction.
They already have.
Oh, right.
They've got lots of things, but it's not. Some of the opportunities for us are that the benefits are multi-dimensional. There's many more dimensions than just one price for one thing. It can benefit many people within a particular discipline or a particular sector, and each of those has got a different problem that needs solving. So you're right, that's true. I mean, a lot of that, by the way, is to do with the fact that social came along and really changed the way you communicate with your customers, including care. If I've got a problem now, I just go BT, blah, and they'll come back to me in half an hour and go, "What's the problem?"
Yeah.
So that's part of that problem. However, I will say this, and that is that, and we know this, don't we? That great design is still great design, and that you have to pay for.
Yes.
So the same thing applies to what I'm talking about here, is the ability to do difficult things in a market. You're never going to completely automate that process.
Yeah.
Even now with the tools available, they're just tools.
Yeah.
It's being able to put everything together and to understand the data and understand where the value is in the data. For us, that's where the real value is, and then being able to turn it into something real.
Yes. And it's a bit like guitarists. Anyone can play guitar, but not everybody's Slash. Not everybody wants to be Slash.
No.
Yeah.
I won't even go there.
Okay. Seth, did you have a question?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the last one. Louisa's pointing at me.
Only because the creatives want to get together, so I
sorry.
want to make sure we give them.
It was just a question more looking at that creative process when you're looking at, say, a new data set. Do you look at it and start from the top down and look at the ultimate potential of that data? It would be really cool if we did this. Or do you start with the most relevant business use, new relevant business use of that data set, and then push the boundary on that?
Typically, I'll look at it and see what might not have been done, and then work it. Does that have any value? I'm trying to think of an example. Actually, there was one I proposed, which was very simple use case in music on a mobile phone. When you're looking at the now playing, the ability to look at the artist's recent Twitter feed. Very simple, nice, because you're listening to an artist, you're looking at an artist's page, and you can see what they've tweeted. That sounds simple. It's not actually that easy. Unless it's Kanye West. Or if I'm right, Lady Gaga on occasion, she's a bit fruity. But anyway, just that's a very tiny example. I'm talking typically about much bigger use cases. But it's understanding, for me, it's understanding where something's difficult because you have a mass of data. And you have 5 masses of data, actually. Is what are the things, in terms of correlation perhaps, that you can extract? Could you turn that into a tool? Could you turn that into a repeatable process? Because that's where the value is. Is it something that's done by a lot of people now? Because if you've just taken a lot of the people out of the equation, they might be angry at you, but it's just cost the company a lot less to do the same thing. There are a bunch of things. You have to think like a business person. If I can do something for less and get more out of it, what's not to like?
It's got value.
It's got value.
Brilliant. We're going to have to wrap it up. Geoff, thank you very much. A little round of applause, please, for Geoff. Thank you so much indeed. And Mark, are you going to take off the creatives? Do you want me to?